Welcome to the Good for America podcast. I'm your host, former Congressman Bob Good, former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, and I'm very excited on this podcast to welcome my good friend from Arizona, the great Eli Crane, congressman for Arizona's 2nd District. He's a fellow member of the House Freedom Caucus leadership team. He's on the board, and great to have Eli Crane with us. Eli, welcome to the Good for America podcast.
Bob, it's great to see you, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for making time in your busy schedule. For those who haven't looked into or studied Congressman Crane's background, he was first elected in 2022, so he's in his 2nd term. He serves on the Homeland Security Committee and the Oversight Committee, two of the most important committees in the House. He is a former Navy SEAL, a combat veteran of 13 years, successful businessman. He's married to his wife, Jennifer, a good friend of my wife, Tracy's, and they have 2 beautiful daughters. And he truly fits the description of what we need in Congress as a true, courageous conservative warrior. It was a privilege to serve alongside Eli Crane for 2 years in the House in the last Congress. And Eli, again, thanks for making time. I do want to jump right in, Congressman Crane, with respect to the Committee on Homeland Security, which you serve on, and talk about the recent change in leadership on the committee with the resignation of former Chairman Mark Green from Tennessee, and the committee's decision. I shouldn't say the committee's decision. That's an important note to make. It wasn't the members, it wasn't the committee. The Republican House leadership system's decision to look past the strong, courageous conservative Clay Higgins from Louisiana, the most senior Republican member of the committee, with a strong background in law enforcement and military service, who was on the task force on the assassination attempt against President Trump, who helped lead the impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas. But he was passed over instead for the liberal Republican from New York, Andrew Garbarino, who has no relevant pre-congressional experience like Clay Higgins does, and didn't have near the amount of time on the committee, or for that matter, in the Congress. Tell me what your thoughts are on that decision, or how that kind of a decision is made that could result in someone like Garbarino being selected instead of Clay Higgins.
Yeah, Bob, I mean, it was really unfortunate to see. I mean, if America got to pick who the next chairman of Homeland Security was going to be, it would have obviously been Clay Higgins, because of how strong he is, how in touch he is with the base, his conservative voting record, but even more importantly than that, his experience in law enforcement. I mean, Clay is one of the best investigators. He's got a long career in law enforcement. He's a veteran himself. There's nobody that, in my opinion, that would have been able to do a better job as the chairman of Homeland Security. But honestly, Bob, it doesn't surprise me at all. Mm-hmm. When I got to Washington, D.C., and I started hanging out with the wrong guys, i.e. you and Andy Biggs and Matt Rosendale, and we started making waves and, started trying to hold leadership accountable and change the trajectory of the country. I knew before I was even sworn in as a member of Congress that my political career was, in a sense over, in that I would never be the chairman of a committee because I didn't play ball and I ruffled the feathers of leadership and I actually fought against leadership. And I think that that's something that, it's unfortunate, but it's the way Washington is. And if you're a guy like Clay who, will vote on principle and will occasionally buck the system, they don't see you as a safe bet. They don't see you as a yes man. And they're going to do everything they can to, keep yes men in charge in those key positions.
Great points. I couldn't agree more. And we both know that from our experience. What is so troubling to me is it demonstrates everything that's wrong with Washington. Frankly, everything that's wrong with the Republican Party in Washington, why things never change. It seems that the only way you can become chairman of a committee is to raise the most money for the party, be a team player or reliable vote for the party that's not a strong conservative, do what you're told. And that's the key to rising into leadership. And Clay Higgins obviously did not has not effectively or successfully played that game. But even worse than that, to your point, if you think about the appropriate role of the federal government to keep us safe and secure, national security, national defense, those sorts of things, to be so frivolous with the chairmanship of what is a very important committee relative to our safety, to take that so unseriously, to put someone like Andrew Garbarino, you would be qualified. I wouldn't be qualified based on my background. I'm a budget guy. I'm a funding guy. I'm a fiscal guy. Finance is my background. But the background that you have, the background that Clay Higgins has, and yet we go to somebody like Andrew Garbarino. Again, it represents everything that's wrong with Washington. Your additional thoughts, or any final thoughts on that subject?
No, I mean, like I said, I think I pretty much summed it up. But that doesn't mean that we can't continue to do good work in Homeland Security. Well, the thing I try and do, Bob, is I try and be realistic and know that the system is the way it is, and I just try and look for opportunities to do my own work and collaborate with other people who are really concerned about Homeland Security. A couple weeks ago, I reached out to the Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, and said, hey, after multiple briefings, some of them, secret briefings, some of them, open hearing briefings, I'm very concerned about our level of readiness to deal with the drone threat that is escalating at a very rapid pace around the world, and will soon, come here to the United States of America. And Deputy Director Bongino was very gracious, had me down to the FBI the very next day with, a lot of his staff. And we went over, some of the complications that they're dealing with. They understand that it's a massive threat, as do many people in the administration. And so, that's just a way as an individual where you don't have to, call the chairman and say, hey, I'm thinking about, doing this. Are you okay with it?
Right.
No, you just go do it, and you try and build coalitions and groups of people that care about things, and get work done on your own. But I'm not surprised by it. I know it's going to continue to be the way the game is played in Washington, and for those of us that really represent the American people and their concerns, we just got to do everything that we can to get the work done.
Well, you're exactly right. And you, similar to Clay Higgins, quite frankly, you're not the kind of guys that just go around criticizing other Republicans for the fun of it. You don't do that casually or cavalierly. You're one of those voices that when you speak, people listen, because you're not a loud, big talker who's always running the mouth like some of the members of Congress might be. And so you're an effective voice, and the people of Arizona 2nd District, and frankly, the country, are better off for having you on that committee. And to your point, you're responsible for what you do. You carry a tremendous amount of influence. You get to provide oversight on the Oversight Committee and to help try to defend the nation through the Homeland Security Committee. And you're not responsible, unfortunately, for what leadership does, and you have to work with the chairman who's there. But I think I appreciate you helping us point out what was wrong with that decision. Looking back over the past 7 months, Republicans now have full control of government. In your first term, I know you were frustrated by the fact that we had the House, and we obviously didn't have the White House or the Senate, so we were somewhat limited what we could do. But we also, I think you might agree, were limited by the courage and the principle and the conviction showed by the Republican leadership. And they always promised us, well, wait till we have full control of government, till we have the Senate, we have the White House, and then we'll do this or we'll do that or what have you, things will change. So I just wanted to get your sense of these first 7 months. We're now into August, into the August recess period, and what you're happy about or proud of or feel like the highlights were of the first 7 months of full Republican control of government. And then also maybe what you're concerned about or where you think we need to do better, or what maybe you're disappointed in.
Yeah, I think in this new Congress, some of the things that I'm most excited about are, quite frankly, the speed at which the administration has moved, despite Congress always lagging behind and seemingly playing not to win, but playing to lose by less. I've been pretty impressed with this administration and just how they've come in a lot more prepared than they were the first time. I think the president has done a pretty good job in surrounding himself with, not only people that have the ability to get the job done, but people who are loyal to him. And I think that that's something he didn't have the first time. And so the border, we all ran on it. We've all known it was a huge issue. And last Congress, when I was with you, Bob, and you were the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, we kept hearing our own leadership saying, "Oh, this is the hill we're going to die on. This is the hill we're going to die on." And apparently, to our leadership, that meant that we'll go down to Texas and do a press conference.
Right.
For me, that means something completely different. And when I'm talking about that, I mean that they were scared to death that there would be a government shutdown. And I think polling showed that our party and our base was so frustrated by the border situation being completely wide open and being overrun, and seeing little girls like Lake and Riley raped seemingly a couple a week. They were like, why aren't you guys doing something about this? And as you'll remember, there was a bipartisan piece of legislation put forward that, in many of our opinion, would have codified the border invasion, and would have been a pretty terrible piece of legislation. And for those of us that voted against it, we were told, "Oh, you guys really don't want border security at all." And what we were saying is that piece of legislation not only would have codified the invasion at our border and let in like 5,000 people a day. We didn't need a piece of legislation. We needed a strong leader who was actually committed to doing what he said. And that's, I think, what the American people saw in real time the last couple months, is that's actually the truth. And the president has moved with lightning speed to secure that border. It's never been as secure as it is now. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work to be done. We need a lot more. We need to hire a lot more Border Patrol agents. We need new technology down there. As technology continues to innovate and expand. One of the pieces of legislation I put forward was a counter tunnel bill. The cartel's not going away. We all know that. It's way too big of money. They're just going to try and find new ways to get their product into the United States. One of the ways I think that they're going to be doing that is through tunnels. I think that they're also going to be doing it with utilizing drones. I think that they're going to beef up their maritime operations and not go through the port of entry or in between the ports of entry, but they'll be trying to do it in the maritime environment with small vessels and whatnot. And so as they adapt, we're going to have to continue to adapt as well. So I think that was one of the great things that has been done in the 119th, and the lion's share of it, I think, is due to the president's leadership on it, but also the fact that we came together in the big beautiful bill and gave Tom Homan and Secretary Noem the resources that they needed to do those very things that I just talked about. And also, I think a lot of the tax cuts that the president had in the big beautiful bill, I think that's going to be really good for the working class Americans. So those are two really good things I think that got done. But now many of us have been screaming for a long time that there needs to be some accountability for bureaucrats and executives within the government who have sold the American people out, and in some ways committed treason. And I think that I know we're going to probably touch on that later, but I think that if there was ever an administration that was going to finally hold people accountable for the things that they've been doing behind the scenes, I think this is the administration that will do it. So I think that there's some good things going on, but Bob, you've always been one of the biggest fiscal hawks that I've ever met, and I really respect you for that. Because of the implications of where we're headed financially as a country, and our debt and our deficits. I'm disappointed that we didn't get more done, and we haven't got more done on fiscal restraint. And what I can tell you is that earlier on in the year, when Republicans went down to Florida, they came back with a plan, Bob, and this won't surprise you at all, and I'm sure you read it in the headlines, but their plan was to cut spending by, I think it was $30 billion
right.
over 10 years, right? And so the Freedom Caucus, and alongside other conservative members that aren't even members of the House Freedom Caucus, we locked arms and we fought to get that up to 1.5 trillion. Now it's still nowhere near where we need to be. But it's a lot better than where we started, and that's what I really see as really the beauty and the strategic benefit of the House Freedom Caucus. And Bob, one of the things that I noticed when I got to, there's a lot of things that obviously I didn't know when I got to Washington D.C. We could fill warehouses with the things that I didn't know. But one of the things that I didn't understand, and I've come to realize, is that oftentimes in D.C., if we hold the line and try to take something down that we feel is bad, oftentimes the product ends up getting worse because the uniparty then unites and moves together. Votes are bought, and often the product gets a lot worse. And so, one of the things that I've noticed since I've got into Washington is that unconventional tactics, like I was trained in the military, are very relevant in Washington D.C. And what do I mean by that? The background I come from in special operations, right. They teach you to go into the enemy's backyard where you're always outmanned, you're always outgunned, and to complete very strategic operations, whether it's killing or capturing, a high-value target or high-value member of the other side, extract intelligence or hit a very strategic target and get out, so you don't get overwhelmed and your small unit doesn't get killed. As a matter of fact, there were times, every single op that I ever went on in special operations, we always had a drop dead time on target, meaning we knew what time we had to leave. We had to be off that target, or we had the chance of being overrun and losing a lot of our guys just because we were outnumbered and outgunned. And I see a lot of that in Washington, D.C. with the House Freedom Caucus. Some of the fights that you and I were in, Bob, it started maybe as 20 people, and by the end of the fight, it was down to 4 or 5 of us. Right. That were still holding the line, and we were fighting not only Democrats, which were over 200 people, but in many cases our own party, which was close to 200 people as well. And so I see that, the role of the Freedom Caucus to, pick a strategic, set of demands or, things that we want from a piece of legislation, get as much as we can, and, try and be as principled as we can, and get what we can, and then, get out, rearm, and look for the next fight. And that's what we try and do, each and every day.
Well, great points there. If it weren't for the Freedom Caucus, things would be much worse. And the challenge, of course, is, when do you realize or determine that you've went as far as you can go, you've made it as good as you can get, and to take the deal that you can get is better than the party going to the Democrats and making a deal with them. And to your point, President Trump has done a lot of great things. He's acted swiftly on attacking DEI, getting rid of federal workers, securing the border, attacking the Department of Education and trying to eliminate that and things like that. But the concern that I think many folks have is that, are these sustainable long-term impact benefits or developments without action from Congress? We all remember how President Trump had largely eliminated the border invasion at the end of his first term, only to see Biden turn on the faucet immediately in his term. And I wonder what you think about the fact that you had some 20 million illegals come in under Biden, and we're on pace to deport about 500,000 this year. Do you feel like we're deporting as many as we can with the resources and the abilities that we have? And what do you know about wall construction? I'm not hearing a lot about wall construction. Wall construction is obviously not the only solution, but it is part of the solution, and it's sustainable, obviously, to have the wall completed. What do you know about wall construction right now, and what do you think about the level of deportations that are taking place?
Well, yeah, Bob, like you and like probably many of the people that will listen to this show, I wish it was moving a lot faster. I do know that not a lot of things move very fast in the federal government. I think, though, that this president has, been very strong in, making sure that, and not only the president, but many in his cabinet have been very strong in making sure that, the orders are very succinct, very direct as far as what the expectations are. And so I wish it was going faster, but, we've still got to hire a lot more individuals to carry out, these operations. And I know it's gonna take time. As far as the wall goes, I know I know that that's something that is on a lot of people's minds. I know the president built a lot of the wall in his first term, and I do believe that that will be completed within the next couple of years. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to a guy at my church who's in steel manufacturing, and he told me after us passing the big beautiful bill that his business was actually doing really well because of the requirements, the ingredients, the materials needed to build that wall. I know his company will be one of the many companies that are participating in that, and so I know it's underway. And like I said, man, I did believe that this president would secure the border in this term, but I didn't think that they would be able to do it as quickly as they did. And you've seen severe opposition to even the deportations that are ongoing. You've seen the rioting, you've seen the doxing of ICE agents, you've seen assaults on ICE agents, even one by a member on the Homeland Security Committee. Mm-hmm. I think her name's LaMonica McIver. And this is something that I've, repeatedly, asked Republican leadership, why is she even still on this committee after clearly on video for the entire world to see her assaulting, an ICE agent? And, it's just one of the many frustrations that we have to deal with on a daily basis. But I do believe it's going to get done. I'd like to see it go as quickly as possible, but I also know these things take time.
How concerned are you about some Republicans, whether it's in the White House or in the Congress, talking about amnesty or not deporting all illegals? And I understand we're going to prioritize the most dangerous ones, the gang members, the ones with terrorist ties and criminal backgrounds, the traffickers and so forth. But I don't want to speak for you, and you're in a border state and you're on the border caucus. And I know you take the issue very seriously on the illegal invasion and the threat of those who are here within our country from the Biden border invasion. But how concerned are you about the belief that many have that Brooke Rollins believes in some amnesty, that President Trump did open the door to that with talk about, hospitality workers, hotel and restaurant industry and/or farm workers being able to stay. Then he changed, okay, not amnesty, but it'll be a works program. You've got Salazar, Maria from Florida, with legislation trying to do amnesty. We know the Democrats all believe in it, and some Republicans do. How concerned are you about that? Where do you kind of think that stands with the Republican House and any willingness or openness to doing amnesty, even if it was pushed by the president or his administration?
I am concerned about it, Bob. And this is, one of the things where, I think it's important when we talk about this conversation. I'm not anti-immigration. I'm pro-legal immigration, right. And that's really the issue here. The United States is, I think, been one of the top countries in the world for decades in allowing legal immigrants to come through, do it the right way, assimilate into our country, add value, become patriotic citizens. I have no problem right. with that. My issue is obviously with the last administration, and then obviously, amnesty packages for people who came through and did it the wrong way, did it illegally. And I do think it's going to be a fight in Congress. I hear the conversations all the time from some of the members you're talking about, and even others. So I think this is going to definitely be a fight, and I don't know where it's going to land, but I know that unfortunately there are many members of our own party that don't want to hold up the president's agenda and what he ran on and what the American people voted for him to do.
Yeah, I think it would be very detrimental to him personally, to his administration, to his agenda, if the voices for that were to be successful on that. When you think about the two greatest harms perpetrated on the country during the Biden administration, I think you could arguably say the border invasion. Great work's been done on that by the president, his administration, Secretary Noem and Tom Homan and so forth. But the spending and the debt and the deficit being the other great harm, I would suggest, the two greatest threats to the country coming out of the Biden administration. And returning back to that for a moment, that's where I was most concerned with the big bill, because while it had, as you noted, that $1 trillion in spending cuts over 10 years, while it's the largest dollar cuts in history, it's because we've never had a $2 trillion annual deficit and 37 trillion in national debt. And so when you break it down over 10 years, it's not all that significant. It's better than it would have been if it weren't for the Freedom Caucus. And then, of course, we've got
Yeah.
the $5 trillion increase to the debt limit. And so we're on a bad fiscal track. And I think that's going to hurt Republicans next year if we don't address it, whether it's in appropriations or whether it's in another reconciliation or what have you. Looking at September 30, the funding deadline for the government before there's the risk of a shutdown, which is, I'm not concerned about a shutdown, but most Republicans, as we both know, are. But as you look at September 30 deadline, you guys are back in your districts, you're on the recess. Speaker Johnson last year promised not to go on recess if we didn't pass our 12 bills. I don't know if he told you guys you wouldn't have recess this year if you didn't have the 12 bills. But having passed a CR back in March, having done reconciliation where while again the Freedom Caucus fought to make it better, it wasn't as good as we would have liked to have been from a fiscal standpoint. And with the looming deadline September 30, what do you see happening with the funding of the government? And I'm going to guess that some of you may have said to the president or leadership, "Hey, we're not going to vote for another CR." I'm guessing that maybe you got promises when you did the CR in March and when you did reconciliation on what they would do with the approps. How do you see that playing out between now and September 30? What do you see happening? What would you like to see, but what do you realistically think is going to happen?
Yeah, I would love to see us do our appropriations bills like we're required by law to do. I don't believe that's going to happen. I really don't. I remember last Congress, right after several of us, including yourself, relieved Kevin McCarthy of his duties. We were sitting there in the conference and we were trying to elect a new speaker, and I was just listening to members, getting their rage out and talk about a bunch of different issues. And I looked at Congressman Biggs, one of our friends, and I said, "Andy, we're not going to save the country with the people in this room."
That's right.
And so, unfortunately, that plays into this discussion as well. So I'd love to see us do the appropriations bills in a fiscally responsible way and cover down on the things that we need to cover down on. But at the end of the day, I think the wise money would be on another CR or an omnibus bill. And I mean, that's the way that Washington has functioned for a long time. And I go back to some of the comments that I made earlier about, kind of the special operation mindset and, just knowing that my focus in these upcoming spending fights is going to be like it was during the big beautiful bill. Get as much as we can, do as much as we can, but know at the end of the day that I'm probably going to be pretty disappointed with the outcome.
Yeah, unfortunately, I fear that you're correct based on past history, as we know, and based on just the calendar. You got 12 legislative days when you come back, and you still got 9 bills to pass out of the House, I think it is, and none of them passed out of the Senate. So it doesn't bode well. And the greatest part of that is that Republicans own it all. And Republicans have to run on that next year in the midterms. I'll come back to that in a second. I want to touch on one other thing before coming to elections, if I may. But the Epstein files, I want to thank you for co-sponsoring Thomas Massey's bill calling for the full and complete release of the Epstein files. You're on the Oversight Committee, which is doing some work to that effect as well. I don't understand how any Republican in the White House and the Congress can defend not being for full release, not being for truth, transparency, accountability. The survivors of the abuse deserve that. The perpetrators should be brought to justice, irrespective of their wealth, their power, their influence, and whoever they are. Just quickly, your thoughts on the Epstein situation and what you would like to see happen with that. And again, thank you for standing strong on that issue.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I co-sponsored Thomas Massey's resolution was just because I believe I believe that every administration should, regardless of Democrat or Republican, should try and be as transparent with the American people as possible on everything. But when we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein in particular, a very hot button issue for a lot of Americans who don't want to see, little boys and little girls sexually abused, sex trafficked. I mean, this has become a very hot button issue, and many of us have been talking about it for a long time. And so I think transparency, is the best disinfectant here. And I've never spoke to the president about this issue, but I would imagine, and again, this is just my own speculation. I wouldn't be surprised one bit after looking at the president's last 4 years in office and how the two just completely bogus impeachment attempts that were launched by the Democrats against him, and how it totally tied up his presidency in turmoil, chaos, and it really, slowed down a lot of what I think the president wanted to do. And knowing that the deep state has been working against him for many, many years, and they actually had control of these files, for the last several years, and now we're learning what we're learning about. Many of us already knew, some of the Russia collusion hoax, background, but we're learning even more and more every day. And so I think it's, and again, these are my own thoughts. Didn't talk to the president on this, but I just don't think that the president, and the administration wants to get their agenda that's moving, pretty rapidly right now, sidelined in, some, false, bogus, somebody, from one of the intel agencies or maybe the FBI inserted, some, Russia PP hoax into the Epstein deal. And so if I had to guess, that would be my guess and why. There's been some pushback. That's just my own opinion, but I do believe the best way to deal with it is, let's be transparent about it. And then if we have to fight disinformation and internal corruption within the intelligence agencies and, the FBI and other agencies, we'll take those on as we need to. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And irrespective of what the Dems' motivation is, the fact they didn't care for 4 years, they are protecting powerful, probably Democrat elected officials or Democrat donors or Democrat friends. I don't know. But irrespective of what their hypocritical motivations might be now, I think from a trust standpoint, it's important for us to take the high road and do the right thing. And to your point, that also extends to, thanks for bringing it up, the growing evidence confirming what we already knew, the fake Russia collusion hoax with new stuff coming out almost every day that implicates the Obama White House and the Clinton campaign. My hope is that the Trump DOJ, the Trump FBI, the Trump administration will hold accountable those who deserve to be held accountable. I'm glad that this stuff is coming out. I want to switch just finally, Congressman Crane, you've been really generous with your time. A lot of folks don't know when they see one of the most courageous conservative warriors in the House, someone like yourself, they think, oh, you're in some ruby red district. You're in a really safe district. You probably win by 20 or 30 points. And they don't know that you've won your first two races by about 53, 54%. And the Dems have targeted you in next year's midterms. So just wanted to ask you about that, about your race, and then just how folks can help and support you, because we certainly need you and more people like you in Washington.
Well, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I mean, it's it's not the best district in the world. As far as the percentages, I represent a bunch of great rural Arizonans, and most of them just want to be left alone by the American people. And what I've come to find, Bob, is if you actually go to Washington D.C. and you fight for them, and you make their issues your issues, and if you see them as your chain of command and not Republican leadership, they'll reelect you. And the thing is, Bob, I felt like God called me to run for office. I never wanted to run for office. I despised a lot of politicians for a long time, and quite frankly, I still do. And Washington isn't a place that I really enjoy spending a lot of time in. But for me, this is just service to my country. And I feel honored in a way that the DCCC and the Democrats have targeted me. I feel like if they're not targeting you, maybe you're not doing a very effective job. And so I accept the challenge. And Bob, the way I feel is, God has brought me here. He's blessed, me being here and shown me favor and opening a door that I never thought I would walk through. And if God's done with me here and wants me to move on and do something else, or my voters, fall out of favor with me and, don't want to send me back to Washington, D.C., then I'm okay with that, man. Because I'm not like one of these guys that wants to be in Washington forever. I think that, I don't think our founders wanted career politicians. I think they wanted, men and women from all walks of life with different backgrounds, different expertise to come together and actually represent the people. And, that's what I feel like I've done. Not saying that I'm perfect or I've never made any mistakes, but it's been an honor, man. And I'm hoping to term limit myself at some point here very soon.
Imagine that. Yeah.
If they decide, if my voters decide that they want to go a different direction, hey, good on you, and I'll go back to doing things I enjoy more.
So how can folks support you? What is that website they need to go to?
EliForArizona.com, and that's a great way to support me. And I just want to give a shout out and appreciation for everybody who supported me in this process. It's definitely not it's not a sport or a vertical that you can get into or perform without the support of a lot of other people. And I'm grateful for those that have supported me along the way.
EliForArizona.com. The people of Arizona's 2nd District are better for you representing them. The country's better for it. We need more people like you who realize who you report to, your Lord and Savior, your wife and your daughters, the people of your district, and the American people at large. So thanks for being willing to serve. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Good for America podcast. Great to have the terrific Eli Crane with us. And we'll just remind our listeners, our viewers, please do rate the show, refer it to your friends, follow me at Rep Bob Good on social media, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Thanks for joining the Good for America podcast.